it's to meet with the state legislators. They have a bill of abolition that would abolish abortion in the state. And so we'll be pleading with the legislators there to support that bill and pass it.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
Would you mind if we hand it out?
Does this have the information about the bill?
I can take some. We're actually just getting ready to start class, but I can take some
Okay,
and
If you wouldn't mind.
yeah, I can understand.
You're
They're probably
right,
trying to
you
do
don't wanna
another
go
one
first.
after the one that failed last August. After the one that failed last
All right,
August. I
thank
mean,
you.
The one that failed last August was so confusing the way it was written. So hopefully, I think it's God's sovereignty, to tell you the truth, that that one failed. It needs to be written differently. So hopefully this will pass differently.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
the difference is, I think this is HB 2181.
Okay.
It's not a pro-life bill. It's a bill that would actually abolish criminalized abortion.
Okay.
Because we're, do you know much about the abolition movement or anything? Well, we're abolitionists. We're not seeking to regulate how, when, or where children can be murdered, but we're seeking to abolish it, to criminalize it as murder. Because if we believe abortion is murder, then we don't see anywhere in God's word where God says to regulate how you can commit a crime, when you can commit a crime, and with what method you can commit a crime, but to abolish it, the crime of child sacrifice. And the pro-life movement as a whole, the leaders, the organizations, they seek to regulate how, when, and where moms can murder their children. And they seek to pass laws that give immunity to mothers so they can murder their children without an abortionist involved, like through pills.
Right, they're trying to do pills and stuff.
And that's where most abortions are happening, is through the pill. And the pro-life movement as a whole believes that every mother who murders her child is a victim and should not be prosecuted once it's criminalized. So we just believe it should be criminalized, and once it's criminalized, those who do it should be held accountable. But they should be put on trial to determine if they're guilty or not. And if they're guilty, they should be punished. They should be held accountable.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I understand, yeah. Yeah, but this doesn't have any, do you know what that bill is, or is it something?
It's I think it's
on the website?
It is. I think it's HB 2181.
Okay.
It's the Abolish Abortion Kansas Act,
Okay,
and it's
so they're bringing it up for vote? Yes.
I don't have dessert. Can I have an ice pop? What? I didn't have
Let's not get the ice pops out. As soon as you get one out, everyone else is going to want one.
it is true.
Well, to my understanding on that, it's not been assigned to committee yet.
Yeah, it's there. I'm not sure if it's going to be heard this time because from my understanding, I'm not sure if it's going to be heard, but we can still tell the legislators we want this to be heard, and it's and this is the only bill that is actually righteous, that would establish equal protection for all human beings in the womb without exception. And the legislators, they just need pressure to pass that, not to pass a pro-life bill that allows mothers to murder their children, but to abolish it, to treat it as a crime.
Okay.
If all that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yep.
And there's more information on that. If you want, I don't want to overwhelm you, but if you want more information, this is basically what we're saying, but it gives more detail about basically how the pro-life organizations and politicians are, they get in states like Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Kansas, pro-life organizations and politicians, they've gotten bills that would abolish abortion. You know what they do with it? They kill it every time. And you may be wondering, why are they doing that? Isn't that what they want? No, it's not what they want, because it's what many people want, Christians, but it's not what the pro-life movement, the leadership wants. Because they think abortion is healthcare. They treat it as healthcare, not homicide. And the biggest reason that I'm aware of that they kill the bills, they don't want to punish moms when they murder their children. Not saying that we should punish moms for the last 50 years who murdered their babies, saying that once it's criminalized, recognized in our law as murder, then they should be held accountable. The moms, the dads, the driver, anyone who's involved, should be held accountable. Because if they're not, if we're not going to hold them accountable, then we're saying abortion is not murder, or it's murder, but we're not going to enforce it. We're going to allow people to get away with murder.
I know what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
And there's a conference going on through today. Today's the last day here in Wichita, talking about all of that.
Okay.
And so yeah, there's a lot of information. You're kind of drinking from a fire hydrant right now.
Yeah, I get it.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like,
And
Yep.
like, if you didn't know anything about abolition before, it's just like, wow. And just think
Well,
that
I'd known that there was a lot of people with, a variety of opinions on it, So I hadn't heard of specifically abolitionists and this kind of organization and perspective of what you guys are about. So yeah, I hadn't heard that exact perspective yet. So
just think the abolitionists of chattel slavery, 1800s, the abolitionists of abortion.
Right.
As it's been said, every age has its evils. Every age has its abolitionists. So we're simply the abolitionists of our modern day our modern day injustice. Chattel slavery was the injustice of the 1800s.
Mhm.
This is our injustice of today.
Yeah,
And
I got you.
so just to kind of put it in historical context.
So I totally agree with you. I want to share with you guys one perspective, because one of the things that happens with these kind of sins is the demand for the sins often comes from other things, right? We also need to be praying for God to do something about human trafficking, because that's one of the reasons why the challenge of what do you do with the mother is an issue, because human trafficking generates a lot of need for abortion, because you have mothers that didn't choose it. They were forced into the act. They were forced into even doing this. So a lot of the sins are farther upstream. A lot of the sins are the way that they're just abusing our children even after they're born. The ones that make it, they're killing them. They take them, and just the demand for human trafficking is insane. So, I guarantee you that's one of the things that you don't see with the abortion is, I'm sure a lot of the demand comes from that, and that's one of the downsides where I understand what you're saying about the forgiveness for things done in the past, but it's an intricate web that has been weaved of sin, right? And so, I think that's one of the reasons why we've never successfully taken care of abortion on its own, because it's not the only problem.
Well,
Right.
yes, sir.
And they should be, the people who do that should be prosecuted too.
Oh, exactly.
Any-
Because
anyone
that
involved.
creates tons of victims. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not saying I'm not
what's
saying
your
you
name?
guys are going down the wrong path.
I'm Nicholas.
All I'm doing is encouraging you. Like, if we're in the fight, God's got a lot of things that He's trying to address.
Well,
And-
what was your name?
Zach.
Zach. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you the rabbi here, or
No.
okay?
No. No, I'm not.
Okay.
We'll just go with that.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Zach.
So
Okay.
yeah, thank you for sharing the information. I appreciate it.
Absolutely,
So yeah.
And if you're able to, we'd love to have you at that rally at the end of the month.
Okay.
March 29th. in
Yeah, thank
Topeka.
you for that. I'll look into that. I don't know. I'll have to look at what's going on.
It talks
Do
about
you know what day that is?
March 29th. It's
No, what's the day of the week?
I'm thinking Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm not sure on that, but I think it's Wednesday. But when it says laws to murder babies are written here,
Mm-hmm.
it's talking about laws that are written by the pro-life movement,
Oh, I see. Okay.
by pro-life groups, by Kansans for Life. Because Kansans for Life is opposed to abolition. They believe that every mom who murders her child is a victim, because that's what the pro-life movement believes. Not everyone in the pro-life movement believes that, but as a whole, that's what the movement believes.
I got you.
And that's we've been hearing talks about that during this conference. It's at the Hilton Garden Inn
Okay.
over on near Broadway and Douglas.
Yeah.
It's in the, if you want to stop by even briefly to learn more about that, and just to see there are, like kind of like you were saying, there are exceptions where there are moms that are forced.
Yeah.
They're at the point of a gun, but most of them, they know
There's
they.
a lot that aren't. I know.
This-
I know what you're saying.
Most of them, like
This doesn't target those moms.
yeah,
No.
like that's why we're saying that our current system of law says you're innocent until proven guilty. So that's what we would do for. I mean,
I know what you're saying.
yeah, we
I know what
like
you're saying in terms of women coming in for abortion. You'd be innocent until proven that you did it completely of your own volition and things like
and
that.
just like any other crime, you're put on trial.
You made the choice.
And
Yep.
and if the evidence is if evidence is presented that says she knew what she was doing, she premeditated this murder, then she'd be found to be guilty and punished. But the pro-life movement believes that's harmful to women or moms, and it's not loving. No, it's actually loving to hold sinners accountable for their sins. It points them to the law of God.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Because that's what the Bible says, that through the law comes the knowledge of sin. But if we tell moms that you're a victim, you haven't sinned, you haven't committed a crime, then we're saying you're not a sinner, and you don't need any forgiveness. We're telling her you're good, when no, she's a murderer in most cases. And so we got to point her to the law of God, that sinners can be saved through Jesus Christ through His shed blood if they repent. But the pro-life movement says no, she's a victim, she's innocent, and in their legislation, they say she's a victim. Don't punish her, but her baby. It's okay to punish her baby to death in case of rape or incest, or fetal deformity. If the baby's missing an arm or a leg, then it's okay to murder them. It's upside down. It's totally upside down.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And that's kind of right there's a nutshell of.
Yeah, I was
And
looking at this.
and you
yeah.
probably already noticed that this is made before Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still most of the information is still applicable.
Still valid, yeah.
But that's this. But it's also to consider. Until last June 24th, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it was officially announced.
Mm-hmm.
For 49 years, that's what we were doing. The pro-life movement was teaching that we must bow down to the Supreme Court and adhere to Roe v. Wade. We must submit to Roe v. Wade. Why? Like, you have many states that were smoking pot, even though the federal law says you can't do that.
Right, doesn't mean you justify just by doing it. Yes.
But then the Supreme Court says you must allow children to be murdered, and we say, okay, we're going to allow it to happen. So we care more about smoking pot than babies being murdered. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's okay to open the door?
These
Yeah.
Coming in?
Yeah, you can come in. This is Zach,
Hey, how's it going, guys?
fellow Christians.
Do you need some help with something?
No, we got it.
Okay. All right.
So we that battery died in the van, that handicap accessible van. Left the key.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Where's my contact?
Thank you, sir.
But
So-
this is
Yeah.
the Fish family and Herndons and Harhoffs.
And Sophia. I can't remember your last name. I keep putting. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I was calling you a Herndon, Sophia.
I'm a Herndon.
We're
So is that does all that make sense? I mean, you've been drinking from a fire hydrant.
Yeah, it
but-
does. It does. You know, God's certainly been working in this congregation with a lot of things going on. So it's something for us to sit and think and pray about. So yeah. So
And,
yeah.
that's just like the providence of God that Miss Amy, who we met out there,
Oh, Amy Rich, yeah.
you know where I met her? Where we met?
Mm-mm.
At the abortion mill back in 2009.
Oh, praying for it.
Well, we
2008, you said?
2009. In January 2009, we met out there, and she was making phone calls to get people out there, and I was one of those she called, and she and her husband were involved, and it's like we come here and there you are, because I don't see her much anymore,
Right.
and it's like
I
that's
don't
how.
think she was even here at the time.
She may not. That's
Yeah.
what 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And but I don't think she. It didn't seem like she was familiar with, or maybe she was, with abolition, and because she said there's pro-lifers here, and it's like, well, that's another reason why we're here is because so many people are pro-lifers, they don't know about abolition. They're like, what's abolition? The abolitionist of slavery. It's like, well, yeah, just move to another generation, another century, and this is our evil, and it's happening not far from here.
Should we shut them?
Yeah, actually, probably. They're kind of doing a class in there. So, yep.
I have more of those too, if for the congregation, well, all of those really, but that.
Yeah, this is good. I'll end up talking with our leaders about it.
Yeah, we got some good people here in Wichita.
I'm local here.
interested.
Oh, you're local here?
Yeah, I
Got
live
it.
here.
Got it.
But
Okay.
call me anytime and I can get you hooked up with them.
I got you.
I think do you
Are all
guys
of y'all
meet
local here?
regularly?
Did y'all drive up?
What's that?
You meet on a regular basis or
These two
Which
ladies are
ones?
from Idaho.
abolition group?
These ladies
kind
are
of.
from Houston area, right?
Gotcha.
From northeast Oklahoma.
So are y'all just traveling around all together or something?
We came here for this mission.
Oh, for the conference. Oh, I gotcha.
there are not many Christians in the city that do this. They go out to the death camps, the abortion mills, go out to the streets. I'm often by myself on the streets because there just aren't many that care. A lot of people say they're pro-life, but it's an opinion in their mind. It doesn't go in. It doesn't result in action on the streets.
It usually just turns out to be voting or giving money to a crisis pregnancy center. Those are the two biggest things that a lot of Christians do. They hate abortion. They think it should be illegal. But then in their mind, they're like, maybe for some circumstances we need to keep it around, but only in those circumstances you should. But we're like, no, I mean, every baby's an imagery of God, but
And if the Netzarim, the followers of Yeshua Messiah, if we could join forces on following Yeshua, what he says, loving our neighborhoods ourselves, and join forces, overnight abortion would be abolished in Kansas and across the country. Those Christian, Messianic believers, Christians coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it'll end when we cease to tolerate. That is the literal reality.
Yeah, you invite what you tolerate.
And we've been tolerating it for 50 years. Like, another way to think about it is Nazi Germany. If you did what we're doing, we'd all be put to death. We'd all be dead by now.
No, yeah.
Nobody opposed it was inviting, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and
He was hung.
and all those people. They were all
Corey ten
put to
Boom.
death just for opposing it.
I mean, they were Christians that were put to death for simply distributing leaflets, pamphlets at a college campus. That's all they did. They were put to death. Sophie Scholl was one of them, her brother, and I think a few others. Today, we have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. So you can go out to the abortion mills, you can go out to the streets, as we've been doing this week. None of us have been held up in handcuffs.
Right.
I mean, even like I was threatened with arrest recently by one of the officers at the abortion mill for trying to save children, but I wasn't hauled off, just threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, what are we afraid of? We have so much freedom in this country.
Well, you tolerate it, and that's what'll come too.
We tolerate it, and it's
Right.
like, oh, I'm going to go to
Yes.
jail. It's like,
Yes.
I'm not in jail. It's like none of us are in jail. So we've been to jail, a lot of us, but we're not in jail now. So I mean, we're actually a lot more guilty than those in Nazi Germany because their excuse was, I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be sent to a concentration camp and worked to death, tortured to death. Our excuse is, people will make fun of me. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to go to jail. People are going to, flip me off.
Fewer likes on my Facebook page and that kind of stuff. I mean, have you seen there's a movie or a documentary, it's called Sing a Little Loudly.
Mm-hmm.
So all the people that went to this church that are still alive today, they were interviewed and they ended up making this whole movie out of it. But it was a church that was on the railroad tracks where the train would pass by and go into Auschwitz. And so they were bringing train loads full of Jews there, and they knew when the train was passing. And these are people that are like confessing this and repenting of what they didn't do. And they said that they knew when they were coming, so they would crank up the organ and turn it up really loud and they would sing louder as they would pass by because they could hear the people screaming for help. Like they'd see the cross,
Mm-hmm.
and they were screaming, and they didn't. They sang louder. They could have gone out and laid down on the tracks. They could have done any number of things. They could have set up explosives or something, but they didn't. And so we Americans, and especially Christians, we're the same. We're those people. When if we see it rightly, we don't. Not yet. We don't see it rightly because we're not in defense of the image of God. And that's the prohibition that he gave. It's not because babies could grow up to be somebody wonderful or they're cute or whatever. It's because they bear the image of God, and so we're defiling and allowing the defiling of the image of God. And it taking place. We got 3 freestanding abortion mills here, where you actually literally go in and pay someone, and they literally dice and crush and rip apart image bearers. But then on every grocery store, every pharmacy, anywhere there's a pharmacy, they're selling the pill that kills one baby for $40. So
The modern day version of that, of Sing a Little Louder, what happened in Nazi Germany, was this past Sunday. This past Sunday, I was out at the abortion mill. It was formerly operated by George Tiller. You might know that name.
I remember.
George Tiller, the baby killer. Still open today. It reopened in 2013. It's open to this day. This past Sunday, it was a bloodbath of babies. The Saturday and Sunday, I was out there. Sunday, and it was so busy. The Pregnancy Resource Center next door was closed, and I don't know how many babies they murdered. It was a lot, and
they're coming from everywhere that has supposedly banned abortion. Oklahoma, Texas. They're coming to Wichita.
And
Sunday's the worst day.
And
Right, because we come over a weekend.
you know how many Christians were there on Sunday? This past Sunday? Local Christians, 2. Myself and a brother. There were 2 husbands and 2 couples that came out from out of town. One from 50 minutes away, another from an hour and 20 minutes away. That was it. And there were some Catholics out there too. And so this is our modern American version of Sing a Little Louder. We know that babies are being mass murdered even on Sunday. Now, a lot don't know that, but it's because no one talks about it.
Right.
I know about it because I go out there and I see, and I tell Christians, if they're murdering children, I'm going to be there, especially on a Sunday when people are not working, they're not in school. And it's like, I can't make anyone else, if they're going to sing their songs and offer prayers, then they got to live with, babies being murdered at that very moment, babies being murdered on their watch, their neighbors. I can't do that. And so, but we were out there, and
1 second. Do you need to go find mommy? Where do you have soap on your head? Okay, go find Naomi, please. Go find Naomi. Do you need change? Go find it. Do you need your bag? Okay, go get your bag. Can you return?
Slightly cute.
But we were out there, and most professing Christians were singing songs, praying. But wow, at the very moment when babies were having their heads cut off, their arms and legs were being torn off their bodies were torn to pieces, treated like garbage. While the image of God was treated like garbage, they were singing a little louder.
Naomi came. Zeke, come here.
And they're open on some weekends.
Ask the woman there to get her bag. Can you help her, please?
They're open on some Sundays, and probably the reason is
Okay, Zeke's gonna help you. Okay. Good boy, Zeke.
probably part of the reason is they know Christians are busy, in their church buildings, and so just like in Nazi Germany, you had they sang a little louder to drown out the train of the Jews coming through, carrying the Jews. We sing a little louder when babies are murdered behind closed doors. That's our modern equivalent to Nazi Germany.
I see what you're saying.
And again, if they, let's say that they did the right thing, that they actually obeyed God, and rather than singing a little louder, they went out there to try and rescue them, they're probably going to get shot, right, by the Nazi guards, or the Nazis there.
Right.
But if we, imagine if we said we could do our regular festivals, assemblies, on Sunday as planned, but babies are being murdered, and we're going to go over there. And this is Amos chapter 5. He says, I reject your festivals, nor do I delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer up to me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, and I will not even look at the peace offerings of your fatlings. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not even listen to the sound of your harps. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Where is the justice and righteousness in our land? It's being violated, not just at the abortion mills, but all over the place, while Christians are busy singing a little louder. And God says in Isaiah 1:15, so when you spread out your hands in prayer, I will hide my eyes from you. Yes, even though you multiply prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are covered with blood. That's our hands. They are covered with blood. We've been ignoring this for far too long, 50 years. Then, as Brother Jeff was saying, we think it's enough to drop change in a baby bottle or to send that check off to the pro-life group, when the pro-life group's actually the one that opposes ending this Holocaust. The pro-life group opposes abolishing abortion. And we think it's enough maybe to go to a March for Life, once a year. No, it's not when you have mass murder happening on a wide scale every single day, it's like, what seems to be an appropriate response? Like, how do we respond when there's one school shooting, 20 children or 30 children murdered in one day? People are up in arms, right? People are in the streets. It's all over the news. But when you have that happen in Wichita, a whole lot more children murdered, most professing Christians, I'm not called to love my neighbor as myself. But God says, what's that?
I was going to say another scripture in Deuteronomy, chapter 21. It's talking about the shedding of innocent blood. A man's found lying dead in the field. They don't know who killed him. And so they're given instructions. They're supposed to bring the elders and leaders from the two nearest towns. And they're supposed to bring, they're supposed to find out who is closest to the shedding of this innocent blood. And they have to go there and they do a ritual. That heifer that they bring ends up dying in the place of the murderer. They break its neck. They say, they make a vow, our eyes did not see this, we don't know who shed this blood. And so it's a serious deal, and it's a principle. So we're not running around sacrificing animals anymore, but God is teaching us that through knowledge and proximity to the evils, our knowledge of it, He's going to hold us all accountable. The more light that we've been given from God, and that would be us in this room. For sure, we would be most guilty if we ignore the evils. If we ignored evils going on within our family, within our extended family, and in our community, we're most guilty. And so it's a principle taught in Deuteronomy chapter 21, is that knowledge and proximity. Knowledge of the evil that's going on around us and our proximity to it, we're going to be held more accountable if we have knowledge and we're closer to it. So we don't like using like blame or guilt tripping or anything. It's an exhortation to you, right, our brother. You follow the same Messiah we do. And so now more light has been brought to you about this. You've been given more information to be equipped. Amy is in this congregation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. She has a deeper understanding probably of what's going on, and
she's been doing this for many years, and
I know Amy well.
And I don't know you. You may be doing some wonderful things. But we're taking advantage. We came to this town,
right,
for a reason.
Right.
And so Kenny Bob said, "My brethren are meeting today. Let's go see if they will receive us."
And I can say, some of us have gone to many just Christian churches. I've been to, I'm not sure how many, maybe hundreds. And the vast majority of them, they couldn't care less. They get upset that we come to them. And so I was thinking maybe...
Do you guys need some water?
Thank you for asking. Maybe a Messianic synagogue will receive us better, have a better response, love their neighbor when most won't. And this is Leviticus chapter 20. This is a very sobering passage. Talking about child sacrifice, which is what this is, right?
Oh yeah.
This and
Gosh, is it in Arizona that they're actually talking about?
the Satanic Temple. That
Yeah,
is,
the one that actually they're trying to even use the religious idea to even justify keeping it or something. I don't know. There was one abortion clinic I heard about that they're actually using some kind of satanic justification for it,
is that,
which has already been true anyway.
well, we kind of have that in Wichita. I mean, with George Tiller. I mean, George Tiller would baptize some of the babies he butchered. You may not know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He would have a so-called minister come in to baptize the babies he murdered.
Well,
if that guy wasn't available,
I
Tiller
don't
would
know
do
that
it.
was I do agree that's of the devil.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he intended that to be satanic. He attended church, so it was more
He's
like
a church deacon, yeah.
It was more like a perverted faith rather than a satanic faith. But still, it's still of the devil.
Yeah.
So
End result is still the same.
yeah, it's still still of the devil. Yeah.
This is.
What do you need? You want to go put your bag back?
So we're here in Wichita today.
Okay.
Part of the nation,
That's
speaking
right.
out
This is, if I may share this with you, this is Leviticus chapter 20. It says, any man from the sons of Israel or from the aliens sojourning in Israel who gives any of his offspring to Molech shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will also set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech, so as to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. Listen to this. If the people of the land, however, should ever disregard that man when he gives any of his offspring to Molech, so as not to put him to death, then I myself will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut off from among their people both him and all those who play the harlot after him by playing the harlot after Molech. So talking about disregarding that man when he gives his offspring to Molech, that is the pro-life movement. That's the church's meaning that they have disregarded moms and dads, but especially moms, saying, you're a victim, we're not going to punish you. Disregarding her, saying that it's okay for you to murder your children. Especially, let's take the abortionist out of the equation. You can take as many pills as you want and murder as many babies as you want, and we're not going to punish you.
Yeah.
That's right here.
I specifically in the way that passage reads, I agree that biblically there's supposed to be judges in place who are supposed to rebuke and execute judgment according to the way that God puts in place. The way that says it, he's not necessarily punishing those because they didn't execute God's justice, but he is punishing those who follow after the man into the evil. It's not quite the same thing. So my one caution for you is, don't paint the whole pro-life movement with a broad brush. And don't paint every woman going into abortion with the same sins. We already talked about, what did I say earlier, human trafficking,
Yeah.
and how many women are forced into the abortions because of being forced into human trafficking.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you guys are of the wrong cause. I'm just saying be careful how you judge people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about that last night. We're talking about the way, because we have an abolitionist lawyer from Texas, Bradley Pierce, and he very clearly went through and he says, it's not all treated the same. People are in different circumstances. It has to do with the intent and their part in the act.
And that's certainly, yes, that's it. And that's another reason why it's not necessarily wrong to try to instill abolitionist type laws like you guys are saying. Because at some point, once you do that, then it does make people accountable for, okay, this is now the law.
We're not naive to the point where we think it's going to end and not take place, but we know that we have to set laws into place as a deterrence to,
Right. You're right, but so my only caution is, if you, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, so please hear me for a second.
Yes, sir.
Your partners in this fight are other believers. Don't too harshly rebuke other believers for what they haven't done. Okay? Not too harshly. If you want to get them in the fight with you, great. Yes. But if you rebuke them too harshly, you actually contribute to the division that is really hurting the body of Messiah right now. In many ways, not just this topic. Not just this topic. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. And here's the thing. When God has put on your heart something that is so important to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be just as important to everyone else, but it does mean that it's a calling on your life for you to figure out how to lead other people in that. And if you hold too much against other people, it's not leading them into that. So the fact that this is on your heart so heavy is a gift from God. It is. But I've seen so many people that everybody I see, God has something on their heart. God has something that means so much to them. And I tell you what, when you have leaders, there's a reason why God puts something on their hearts, and it's so easy as strong leaders to just think, why isn't anybody doing this? Why isn't anybody doing that? And it might actually be, as a leader, that we haven't learned how to lead people into it in a way that they believe in it, that they're committed to it, and that they're willing to sacrifice for it too. That's why God puts leaders in His community and in His body. So I totally believe in the cause that you guys are going for, and I don't have any fundamental disagreements with anything you guys are saying. But alienating people is not going to lead them into it either. And especially when it's so important to you, it's very easy to think, why doesn't this matter so much to other people? Well, maybe it does matter to them, but they don't know how to walk into it in a way of understanding, how can I contribute? How can I do this in a way, especially if, I feel guilty for not doing this, or I feel guilty for not doing that, then we need a chance to kind of put the past behind us and figure out what we can do in the future to really make that happen.
Amen. You may be that guy.
And I will tell you, well, I know what God's called me to, so that it's a slightly different thing. But actually, if I may, what I'm doing right now is what God called me to, is leading leaders. I can tell you're a leader. So, but if people aren't following, then there's, go ahead. Then we got something to learn. We really got something to learn. So I know I've had to learn a lot of leadership lessons the hard way, and so I will also say that as a leader, often your leadership is more powerful than you actually doing the work. So if you're wondering why you want to be out there, but there's not other people out there with you, then learn how to be a leader. And instead of worrying about, man, I got to do this and I got to do that, a leader figures out how to find more people to help them. And maybe you just got to back off from the work a little bit and go find who's going to help you. You know what I mean? Which I understand, that's why you're coming here. I get it.
Absolutely.
I get it, right? So, but I know for me as a leader, that was definitely a hard lesson, learning. If you are a leader, what's wrong if people aren't following? What's not working right? And so I would just encourage you. What was your name again?
Nicholas.
Nicholas?
Yes, sir. And you're Zach.
It's a good name, yeah.
Shake your hand again.
Yeah. I would just encourage you, think about what it means to be a leader. And because I think that your whole cause could go to a different level if you think through that. I appreciate that you brought these people here today. That's great. And again, I agree with your cause. I'm going to pray about it. I'll talk to leadership about it. What we think that this might do for us here in this congregation, because we've got a lot of things going on right now.
I got a proposition. is that this is, it, not trying to be argumentative, but this isn't a cause. This is a love your neighbor issue. This is a second law commandment.
It's the golden
Love
rule.
your-
Living out the golden rule.
Yeah, it's not our special calling. It might be, some people might be gifted in this. He feels a certain burden, but I can almost guarantee you he would never say this is my calling. We have different giftings and leanings, and we should pursue those. But kind of Christianese is we get a lot of people will go to churches and people will say, well, my calling is to play the bass guitar and the so
Yeah, that's a little overkill.
I
know what you're
support
saying.
what you're doing and what you're saying, but my calling is to play the bass guitar, and so people hide behind special callings.
Oh, your calling is the things that God wants you to do in the moment. And I think I know what you're saying about bass guitar. The kingdom, when it moves, that's our calling. Whatever the kingdom is, whatever God is wanting us to do day in and day out.
We're called to be salt and light in this culture.
Yes, and there's definitely key things that are part of it. I agree with you from a moral perspective, from a commandment perspective. I totally agree.
So we can
Which
do
is-
5 and 6 different things. You know, we can do.
Exactly.
Many of us do.
We can have all
Exactly.
kinds of different ministries, but we can't, if it's a basic, fundamental, love your neighbor as yourself issue, and there's injustice in there, you know, God's foundation, his throne is founded on 2 things, and justice is one of them.
Yep.
And so, if we're ignoring the justice of image bearers of God, no matter how big or small, how far developed, then I'm just making the appeal that that doesn't fall into the area of callings. Is that I feel called to do certain things, but this is something, once that's set in my mind and I see certain scriptures that I see me being held accountable to by God eventually, that kind of sobered me and
Oh
woke me
yeah,
up to it.
I know exactly what you're saying. I know
It's-
exactly what you're saying.
You're familiar with
Yeah.
the parable of the Good Samaritan?
Oh yeah.
The religious leaders.
Yeah, they all pass right by him. Yeah.
So
of
ask,
course, because they don't want to be unclean.
ask yourself, how are we in this country any different than them? Because the man lying dying in the ditch is our preborn neighbor. Not just one man, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of helpless, innocent babies every single day. And we're
the
too
ones
busy?
working in the temple that are performing the services, the priests are the ones that are walking by, the other ones.
Like, you're familiar with Winter Jam?
Oh yeah.
Happened in Trust Bank Arena
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
it wasn't long ago. Yeah.
I went from the murder mill, the abortion mill, over there, and it was a bloodbath. It was a Friday. It was an absolute bloodbath of babies. I think over 60
That's
babies
quite a contrast.
were slaughtered.
Going from the abortion clinic over to the concert.
Well, you know why I did that? Well, one reason, because I wanted those going into that concert, and there were a lot of professing Christians or churchgoers there. I went over there and I said, I just came from the place where they slaughtered children. I didn't see any of you out there. Thousands of people there. And how many of them would say, I'm not called to that? Wait a minute, wait.
Oh, that's what you're getting at. Now I see.
You live in a culture that
Yes.
slaughters children, and not even one of you is called to love your neighbor. It's like,
No, I know what you're saying. There's some things that have nothing to do with calling.
it's a
Yeah.
command, and
Yes, I know what you're saying.
I wanted them to
Yes.
know. I had images of murdered babies for them to see. Like this happened to your neighbors just over there. Not one person, not one, among thousands here at this concert, loved their neighbor being murdered today. And I said, well, can I find one person here? I'm not asking for 1,000. I'm not asking for even 10. Can I find one person here at this Christian concert to come join me next week? Nope. And
Did you end up talking to people and they?
I talked to. I mostly just preached. I was by myself some of the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find Christians in the city who actually love their neighbor, honestly. But a few people came over, but I wanted to preach to the people, the masses, and yeah, there were people that agreed, appreciated it, but it's like, but I'm still standing out there by myself at the death camp with Catholics around me. Because the Christians in the city, like almost
You're
everybody
saying
here.
Catholics are the only ones that show up?
Yeah. There's only a few Christians out there.
They're that guy that is from Samaria. They're okay. It might be a bad analogy, but
No, I got what you're saying.
they're the ones with the wrong theology. They're not worshiping God in the right way, in the right place, and all that. They're the Samaritans, the half-breeds, that the religious people were told to have nothing to do with. That's us. We're not supposed to intermingle with the Catholics because they're, all their stuff. So we're better than them, right? And that's my analogy to my evangelical brothers, is that we're the religious men. We're that are passing by them. And it's the Catholics who we can't stand their doctrine, but they're the ones out there doing it. They're the ones, coming to those places. I don't think they're doing it perfectly or anything like that. I don't do it perfectly, but I see them as a whole, as the people who go to those places. And they're the good Samaritan in that picture often, and it's not the people that have better doctrine or more light.
It's people who do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I noticed back in 2009 when I started going out there. I saw all these Catholics carrying the rosary, walking about with their rosary beads, and I thought, there are so many Catholics out here. We're the Christians. There's a few Christians, but my theology wasn't that great at the time. I didn't know a lot, but I was even thinking, there's so many Catholics out here that love these children, that love their neighbor. So few Christians. Are Catholics the ones who are Christians? Because they're the ones obeying God here. And then I realized, well, that doesn't mean that they're Christians. It just means they love their neighbor when the Christians are not loving their neighbor. And that it's an indictment on the Christian churches that unbelievers love these children when you refuse to. When the city full of professing Christians, Christian churches adopt the landscape, and we're just too busy doing other things, mowing our lawns, sleeping in while babies are being mass murdered, or doing whatever. Like, we'll have time to go to Winter Jam, but we don't have time to love our neighbor over here having his head cut off. And so it's a love your neighbor issue. It's a golden rule issue to treat others the same way you want to be treated. And so I've been told that over the years, this is your calling. It's like, no, it's a command. It's like, it's not do it if you want to, if you feel like it, it's do it. It's true and undefiled religion to visit orphans in their affliction, orphans and widows in their afflictions.
I'm going to go get her loaded up.
I got you.
Nice to
What was
meet
your
you.
name again?
Jeff. Fish is my last name. Just Fish. That's all you got to remember.
Good to meet you, Jeff.
And so it's just, we're just not following the Word of God. We're not rescuing those who are being taken away to death. That's what God says in Proverbs chapter 24, verse 11. Proverbs 31, 8 and 9, you may be familiar with these passages. God says to open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the unfortunate. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the afflicted and needy. But how are we doing that if we know, and this is part of why we tell people, because a lot of people don't know, so we tell them. And when we do know, how can we say that we're obeying God, we're rescuing our neighbors, we're practicing true and undefiled religion, when we know, babies are being mass murdered over there, my preborn neighbors are being slaughtered, having their heads cut off, but I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to pray, but I'm not going to actually go out there. Why not? Because I'm too busy. I know big families that go out there that drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to come here. I got panic attacks. I have terrible anxiety. I do too. I suffer terrible depression. That's their excuse. Guess what? I do too. But I go anyway. God uses weak people to go out there. If we would just deny ourselves and forget all the excuses and say, yes, I'm weak. I struggle with this or this or this, but I'm going to go anyway. I know people who have had cancer out there. People in wheelchairs. People who have horrible anxiety, depression. People who have had hard lives. Go out there. They don't make excuses. But our excuses equals empty sidewalks in front of the abortion mills. Because we don't see these children as babies. We don't see them as human beings. Our actions prove that. We think that they're not human just like anyone here. And we see them as subhuman. Because if we did, even those who, even the Satanists that came here for this conference, they came to protest what we're doing. They even said, if you believed abortion is murder, you'd be going down there and going inside that abortion mill. It's like, actually, I would be. But guess what? If I do, I'd go to jail. It's like, you don't think I want to do that every time I go there? But if I do, I'll be in jail, and I can't do this work if I'm in jail. And it's like, do you have any idea how hard that is for me not to go in there and stop it?
Right.
But there's police right there right now, and they will stop me from even getting to the entrance. They'll haul me up in handcuffs. But it's like, yeah, do we really believe these children are being murdered, that they're even human beings? Most of us, no. Sometimes we're guilty of that, not acting like these are human beings. We all struggle with apathy. We've all had to repent of apathy, every one of us. But we all need to repent, all of us. And so it's like,
Things to repent of, yes.
what's that?
Yeah, we all have things to repent of, yes.
And
Sorry, she was.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I cannot hear it out of this ear, so I couldn't hear you talking.
I wanted to just say that I understand what you were saying about leadership, because my dad has had to go through that. He is now a state legislator in Idaho, but several years ago, we were exhorting churches in our area, and one pastor, a very large church, about 1,100 people, he did not like the message at first, but and we're in Idaho, very conservative. There's no abortion clinics in our area. We're all in the other state.
Right.
So he said he never really got responsible. I said, well, it would have been different if we had an abortion clinic in our town, but it's over the border. So he never really thought about it. And after we showed up there one time to plead with them that, well, everyone from Idaho is going across the state line, we actually do have responsibility, because it's still a love your neighbor issue. He called his congregation to do something. He said he hadn't been caring about the murder of the preborn in his city, and he realized that he was just very sinful for ignoring it. And so each church, you were right about it looks different for each person in each sphere. He goes out to the mill because he's got a mill in his city. My dad is going to the legislature and bringing bills for abolition as well as bills for other things, because he's learned that you got to love your born neighbor and help stop government tyranny and stuff.
Yeah.
But then for the church as a body, as a, don't want to say organization, but most churches kind of function like one. You can do things like our church mass signed petitions and letters to our legislators, and then burden. You are right about all of us have a duty to love our preborn neighbor, but it will look different for each person, like the lady from your congregation. She goes out to the mill all the time. People should be going out to the mill all the time, but different congregants are gifted in different ways, and one of them might realize that the way he can love his preborn neighbor best is to go work to get legislation in, or get abolitionist-minded people elected, or create more pregnancy centers. But the love your neighbor issue is something that affects all of us, because it's a command from God to all of us. So I just wanted to say that there's a little bit of a bridge between what you were saying is true, dovetailed into the duty to love your neighbor. My dad has had to learn to grow as a leader. He was called to he had to speak to 30 pastors in his city, and they're like, okay, well, what do we actually do? That's
right.
Another conversation, how to put it into practice.
Right.
And for us in our state, it looks a little different than it does for Nicholas in his city, but it's still a mandate. And I mean, the pastor of the church I'm talking about, he's super busy. He can't go out to in front of the mill full time, but he does preach to his congregation many times a year about it, so that they remember.
Yeah.
And they can
well, and I know you talk about supporting pregnancy care centers is
like
a different way of doing it, but we're all connected to one. We have personal friends with one in Newton that we've supported here many times.
It
so
is a needed aspect, because of the women you're talking about who are victimized. There are not very many. There are some who are trafficked.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to get them to not do it.
And
you're trying to give them the support so that
Nicholas,
they don't even go that way.
We've literally heard of abolitionists who are out there at the mills and who are able to spot women who are being trafficked into them, especially if there's women out there. There's only one crisis pregnancy center around here, right?
There's a
churches
few,
can become,
but
you can set up a care
Yeah,
line.
we're connected to the one
on that-
in Newton.
I'm just saying,
on that
Yeah.
note,
the AIMKS,
Mhm.
on the stuff he gave you, since they are churches, they could probably, be like, well, how do we do this? Do we do like training classes? If you want to go to the abortion mill, here's what you do, because it can be really scary for people the first time.
oh yeah.
You could have him teach
Yeah.
a class once a month on how to do it, and then if people from your congregation want to go, they could go. It's
Right.
very much up to you guys to decide how to put it in practice. We're just exhorting you to start thinking about it.
Yeah, well,
And
the tide is turning, so.
well,
we
like
gotta be doing something.
one I want to add to that, the Pregnancy Resource Center next door to the abortion mill, the Tiller Death Camp,
Mm-hmm.
is closed half the time. Like when the death camp's open on weekends, the pregnancy center is closed. Saturdays and Sundays. Even during the week, it's not open every hour the death camp's open. So it's like half the time I can't even point them out to the Pregnancy Resource Center because it's closed. And so it's like, and even during the shutdown of the country, when so many things were shut down, guess who was open? Guess who was closed?
Yeah.
The death camp was open and busy murdering people. The Pregnancy Resource Center, we're closed until further notice. Wait a minute, I thought Christians actually love their neighbors themselves. I guess not.
Could you imagine if each church had enough people that were interested in going out, that there were also women and mothers in the church who were very caring, and you could have a care line number. You could give out and say, call this number right now, a lady will help you. We've got a place for you to get a free ultrasound if you need it. Like, I don't know.
Right.
And like, that's something else we're doing, is going, the locals are going to the Capitol every Wednesday to educate the legislators and the public, because there's usually a lot of people there at the Capitol on abolition. And it's like, they know by now we're not pro-lifers, we're seeking and demanding the total and immediate criminalization of preborn child sacrifice. And we will accept nothing less. And so we go there and to educate them and to call them to repent for passing bills, legislation that allows some babies to be murdered.
And that's another thing. Our churches in the area, it took them a little while to understand the differences between pro-life and abolition legislation. It took a lot of just basic, not like they knew something needed to change, but they didn't know what. It took a lot of basic education, but now one of them has voter guides. They have a team of people do a lot of research on which are the good candidates in the area on abortion and on other issues. And the church puts out a voter guide that reaches half the people in the district. So.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys for stopping by.
Zach,
Yeah.
And this is my first time ever being in a building that housed a Messianic congregation, and I have to say it's nice.
It's a blessing. Yeah, we actually we just had. Yeah, it's very rare for Messianic congregations to have their own building. That's for sure.
If my wife and I, if we ever get back to Wichita on Sabbath, we may check y'all out again.
Yeah.
And try again for a service.
Yeah. So it was Keith
Kenny Bob.
Kenny.
Kenny's
Kenny
good.
Bob got
Kenny's
it.
good.
I didn't know. So,
Hannah from
sorry,
Idaho.
Hannah. Got
We're
you.
really disappointed you didn't remember all of them.
Yours was Sophia.
Whoa!
I remember
You must have
the
had
rest.
practice learning to remember.
So
Good,
I know Sophia.
So just think, if I'm not mistaken, you were named after Sophie Scholl, right?
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
I mentioned Sophie Scholl earlier, put to death in Nazi Germany.
And Zach,
Gotcha.
I left a few of these on the table. Is that okay? Or would you prefer?
I'll ask him about it. It might be okay. We've done things like that before, so I'll ask him about it.
Yeah,
So-
if not, then
I get it. I get it. So
But
yeah.
blessings, brother. Appreciate
Yep.
you.
God bless you
Right.
guys.
Thanks
Yeah.
for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for drinking from the fire hydrant.
Yeah, that's all right.
And if you have
I'll
any
come
more
over it.
questions, call
What's
me.
that?
I'll come up for it. It's all right.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I can give you my contact information
You
since
want
I'm.
to write it on his? On this one?
Um,
Just write it on that one.
And
Yeah, I
the
borrowed-
AIM Kansas, if one of you or a member from your church signed up to be a member, it's just like a mailing list.
Okay.
They will keep you updated on what, they have churches across the state, and you just kind of network on, okay, how are we gonna do something about abolition next, maybe as a concerted effort, and it's all different denominations, isn't it? It's not
yes.
denominational specific as to what they're doing, it's just like action item, we should probably call these legislators. The whole
Right.
church could call legislators.
Right?
And we have another, I mean, it's.
You're not signing onto a creed.
Yeah,
It's just
I
an email
understand.
list.
And you're not going to get a bunch of stuff in your mailbox. Oh, maybe you will.
Yeah, in the abolition movement,
Yeah,
it's
I'm not
really a
really looking at that much
mixture.
stuff.
We have another family that we fellowship with on occasion, Messianic in the Panhandle, and then they're also abolitionists. So it's just really a mixture of.
Right?
So.
Yeah, I know, I get it. People come from all different backgrounds when they believe in it. I get it. Thank you, sir.
And if anyone here wants to come out to the death camps and what do I do, they feel free to join me out there. And I'm also just on the streets. I preach a lot of times at the Keeper of the Plains. When it's nice weather and people are out there, I'm out there preaching in the evenings.
Okay.
And go to events, the Intrust Bank Arena. I preached out there many times. So if they want to join in that, they're welcome to, because usually I'm just by myself. And
Consider that idea about a training class.
so we all need training. I mean,
Yeah.
when I started in 2008, I was starting cold turkey, just a blank slate. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. No one ever talked about it. No one did anything. All I knew is come out to the abortion mill. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do, but I'm just going to go. I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what to say. I'm just going to go. And not everyone starts that way, but I just went because I found out babies are being murdered in my city. I found out, where. I found out where.
Yeah.
And I just went.
Yeah.
Hey, Miss Amy.
See you later, Nicholas.
It's good to see you. It has been a while.
At the clinic sometime.
Oh, is
What's that?
Is that
I'll see you at the clinic
Yeah, I think-
sometime. I go there, but not very often. I'm pretty busy with doctor's appointments.
Yes, ma'am.
God
Hey.
bless you. Pray to meet you.
Well, I probably need to catch up with my family now.
Well, I
So,
appreciate we
yeah.
took a lot of time from your Sabbath.
Yeah.
Thank you.
bless you guys. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for hearing us tonight.
Yeah.